And if not, you guys just meet each other.
Thank you. Did you make it? I didn't know. Some people came and I didn't know. You could have told me that.
All right, we're live, guys. We're good. We'd like to call the work session to order. The first item on the agenda is discussion on attendance policy. Trustee Eldridge, I know there has been lots of information that was distributed from when it was previously discussed.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can say anything different than I did at the last meeting. This isn't necessarily a meeting attendance policy, but you could, I guess, categorize that as an offshoot. It's really just about a daily work attendance policy that the state of Michigan doesn't recognize for elected officials, full-time elected officials. So I handed out the draft last time. I didn't really hear back from anybody other than Trustee Ross, who had some questions. It just basically says that the expectation level for a full-time elected official in Ypsilanti Township is to work the same work hours that our employees work, and that the time off they accumulate would be consistent with a like employee in the Teamsters bargaining unit, since that's the bargaining unit that we seem to mirror for the full-time officials when it comes to benefits or pay raises and everything else. So it's really nothing more than that. It simply asks that the full-time officials have a basic work schedule of 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Any work done after 4:30 really doesn't go towards those 40 hours. They certainly are under no obligation from the state of Michigan to do that. They can work one day a month, one day a year, 1 hour a year, if they so choose. The only other thing I put into the draft was if an full-time elected official chooses not to follow this resolution, should we draft it, they just would not be eligible for a yearly pay raise. That is doable under the state of Michigan law because we're not cutting any compensation or benefits that they had on the day they were elected into that office. So I guess that's really all I have unless anybody has any questions.
Are there questions or discussion? I want to thank Clerk Rowe for providing the history because it did refresh my memory on a lot of the issues. So we do have a policy and procedure manual that every employee is given, even though we're not employees. And we're starting to implement the elected officials and appointed officials in that policy. Is being revised. It hasn't been revised since 2008. So we're trying to include all the updated policies with the elected officials or appointed officials. I think Doug's letter or comment that was in the minutes was very clear. I don't have them before me, but basically, now I remember why we didn't do it then. I have no problem with any rules because I come to work. But rules that are not state law, I think, become an issue, and we can never exceed state law in any other circumstances. Because I would like to for fireworks as one, but we can't do that. And state law and Michigan law and employment law, you're like a non-union, a union employee, a management employee, but there's actually a category for elected officials. And we fall under that state law. But I think if we could, look at adding it to the Policies and Procedures Manual, which sets out expectation of every person. The proposal that was distributed, I didn't realize you were just going to redistribute what was distributed in 2016. So that's.
It's changed, so it's somewhat changed.
Yeah, there was, I think, 2 changes in it, but I didn't realize it was going to be the same as it was. And, I think work ethic is important for everybody, and everyone does have to be held accountable for that. I agree.
The biggest point of the change was the original proposal had a stipulation that deducted pay, which you can't do under state law, I get that. This doesn't have that. So I guess I would like to hear why we couldn't do something like this, simply because the state doesn't mandate that full-time elected officials come to work and do the job that's expected of them. Doesn't mean that the township can't step forward and do something different and try to change that. Again, this doesn't delete any compensation from a current full-time or a future full-time elected official. What it simply does is say if you don't meet a certain standard, you're not eligible for a pay raise that other people that do come to work get.
Which we can say that now, right? You can say that now, that full-time officials.
Well, I'm not sure how you would do it now, because if I don't come to work all year and in November you tell me I don't get a pay raise, my first argument would be you didn't tell me what the benchmarks were that I had to meet. By telling me now what they are, I fully understand it. And I get the whole idea that the HR has a policy book and you're updating those, but my hope was to put this in as a resolution on its own. If there's no will to do that, then I'll drop the issue.
Any other comment?
I have a couple.
Trustee Monica?
Yeah, like I said, from what I get, this came from, a previous board, obviously, because it's a 2016 policy, and now, we're in 2019. So I have a couple questions. First of all, obviously, I'm looking at this, and is this, and maybe this is a question for Trustee Eldridge, is this meant as a policy in itself, or is it meant as ordinance? I just want to make sure.
It's meant as a policy in and of itself, just like it was for the trustees. I guess that's where I'm struggling to figure this out. If it was okay to put a standard on the trustees who are part-time, I guess I'm struggling to find the logic on the pushback against a similar policy for full-time officials. That's where I'm struggling.
That answers that question. The next question I would have is I think I even discussed this with you, so bring it out to the table. 8:30 to 4:30 is that sometimes I know that, officials may have to flex their schedule. So basically, if they have to, and I almost hate to say they, because it sounds like they are different entities and beings and they're elected officials, but if the full-time elected officials have to flex their schedule, like just say, for instance, one have to come in at 6:30, right? And so with that, basically, if you're looking at an 8-hour day, 6:30, that means that person would be off at 2:30. Does that fall into the 8:30 to 4:30? In other words, can you flex the schedule at all, as long as the majority of your hours that you're spending is during the normal work day? I hope that makes sense.
It does, and I don't have a problem with that. I guess the only thing I would say is, do we allow our employees to do the same thing? If we do, then it's consistent. If we allow them to do it, that's okay. And I don't have a problem with that. Again, the whole premise is to ask our board of 7, some of who have asked me to write this policy twice, to simply hold ourselves to a higher standard of accountability and responsibility than other communities around this state may do.
That gets to my last question. a policy, right? And that's what trustee Eldridge has said. And then, if I have it correct, Supervisor Stumbo has said that there's an update of the policy manual that's going to take place. Then what we're talking about is a policy and not any type of ordinance. So I guess the question would be, is this form added to the policy? Is there any authorizations, any authorizing or I guess changes to this proposed policy? Because if it's policy, then, and if it's going in possibly a policy manual, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, is this a policy that's doable, or does this policy, proposed policy, need any changes or alterations? That's what I see. I don't know if anybody else see anything different, but that's what I see.
Any other comments? Clerk Rowe?
Just because I don't know if everybody got a chance to read it, but, you know, when we visited the same issue, the policy started out as a trustee elected officials policy. Then it morphed into just a trustees, like how are we going to pay the trustees' salary, or it ended up being a per meeting thing with a rolling 12 months, and it morphed into that. And then the elected officials kind of, I think trustee Eldridge, if I remember right, withdrew it from, from the board's work session or items that we were discussing. That was kind of the end of it back in 2016. But just to refresh folks, one of the things that's on November 15, 2016, in view of the elected officials policy, Attorney Winters, and this isn't verbatim, of course, because it's the minutes, but, no, I've lost it. Here it is. Attorney Winters and questions that, that were, the discussion that was going on at the work session at that time said that a half hour earlier that the new township board officials, along with the park commissioners and other officials in the township, took an oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the state of Michigan, and the Ypsilanti Township ordinances. The oath carries with it a full responsibility to fulfill those duties, and the duties are very specific. He said the township board officials are elected and are not township employees. Attorney Winters stated there's nothing he could do as a township attorney to say they have to do certain things that are required of a township employee. He said every 4 years they come up for a job performance review by the people of the township. If the people feel they're not doing their job, there's an ultimate job performance evaluation. It's called an election. Attorney Winters said that, excuse me, all elected officials in the state of Michigan do not work the same amount of time, but they all have the same oath. Excuse me, I'm sorry. He said that township officials have responsibilities 24/7 and work a lot of evenings and weekends, and there's no clock to punch. He said this was how the state of Michigan set it up for their elected officials to conduct business. And he said the ethics of each elected official could be evaluated by the voters. So that's what he said. I kind of had done a review, and I apologize that I didn't get it out because it was, with everything else that's going on, I didn't. But I think some of the issues I had, and I can hand that out, and I won't read it verbatim. You can do that on your own because Stan had asked for input, so this was my attempt to provide that input. Thank you. That the assumption of the policy, the premise that underlies the entire thing, in my opinion, is that we are employees, and the designation employees has legal implications. An employee is very specifically defined. If you look at any of the Labor Relations Act, Public Employee Relations Act, labor standards and hours, any of the things, FLMA, all those things, there's always a definition of employees, and it doesn't include, elected officials. And so we are not, I think that's really, it took me a long time to get my head around that back in 2016, but we are not. And I think one of the easiest ways for me to understand it was that whether you're elected as the president or the governor or state legislator or a township official, a trustee, or a full-time official, is that you're not employees with the same rights and conditions that are under that. You're actually elected to be the clerk or the treasurer or whatever we're elected to for the entire term of your office, 4 years, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And I think once you can get that in your head, then the whole idea of like, oh, we only work 8:30 to 4:30, or we get vacations, when in fact we're I never get a chance, Brenda never gets a chance when she's not the supervisor or the treasurer, and your trustees you're always a trustee, regardless of whether you're in the office or out of the office, whether you work 40 hours a week or whether you work 80 hours a week, that you're always on there. And I think that's the biggest, issue with the policy is that it's trying to make us fit in that we're employees and we're not. We have no, we're not covered on workman's comp, FLMA, all those things, the different laws, but both the state level and the federal level that cover employees does not cover us. If they fall in the parking lot, unlike some other, the employees here fall in the parking lot, they get workman's comp, which makes up, between they get 100% of their pay, basically, for the time that they're off. Their medical things are all paid. If we fall in the parking lot, that's really not the case. So I don't know if that's what went to people's head when they passed the Public Act. I think it was in 1940-something, if that was in there, when they actually came up with that. MTA was very clear. I mean, if you read that packet, it says in there, it is not legal to set hours for elected officials. It's not legal to set up other than what the statutes already outline as your duties and what it is that you're supposed to do. And that goes for trustees and for all the full-time officials too. And in many communities, the full-time officials here are part-time officials. So maybe that goes into part of why they did what they did. Knowing that in bigger communities, it's gonna take, more time to do the job because you're servicing, a whole lot more people. The statement in the policy that talks about there's no standards on work hours or time off allowed, it's just, that rubs in direct contradiction with the legislation. They've passed laws that it's very clear on specific what all of our duties are, and that we have to do those duties, during our entire 4 years that we're in office. So it's not that there's no standard. It's not the standard of being an employee where you're set and you punch a clock and you only work that and you go home and you're done. That's not the case. And also, there's, in the policy, it talks about time off, and if we don't call in for a meeting, that, like if something comes up and we didn't get a chance to do our email and tell the supervisor or HR, because in different cases it says supervisor, other cases it says HR, that we were gone, then we have to, at a public meeting, give our reason why we're off, and it even talks about providing documentation. And I don't know if we're covered. This is the one thing I didn't find out. I don't know if we're covered under HIPAA. I'm suspecting that we are, but I don't know, since we're not an employee, so I don't know if HIPAA refers to just employees, but still at the same time, I think that I would never ask you, like, if you want to share with me privately, why because it could be personal reasons, it could be your healthcare reasons, so that to me is, Monica asked for, is the policy okay to send to, Karen Wallen if they want to include it in their procedures? And so I'm just kind of going through things that I don't think are appropriate to have in the policy in terms of, what our private reasons are why we didn't attend a meeting and have to do that at a public meeting and stuff too. There's also mention in there in changing posting requirements for meetings and when we notify folks. The law says when you have to do that, and I just think to put something else in there is just confusing. And to remember, okay, well, the law says this, which we've been practicing under the 30 years I've been here, and then now we're going to say, no, we want you to do it a different way. So that I have a problem with that notification. And the truth of the matter, whenever we call a special meeting, no one wants to waste their time, so we go out of our way to make sure there's a quorum when we call or email or text everybody. So I don't really see the necessity of trying to change the rules that are being totally in conflict, with the state law. I think maybe you could do that. I don't think, but as the supervisor calling it or as the clerk calling it, you're going to be required. We still got to meet the state law, which I think the requirements that were mentioned in policy was a little more notification. And again, I think that unless it's an emergency, and I can't even remember a time when we scheduled a meeting like the next day within 24 hours. So there's always, pretty much a time frame. And in the summer, we always try to make sure it's on that first, we tell everybody to keep that on their calendars the first Tuesday of the month, and that's usually when we try to do those, unless, like I said, we get backed up and there's an emergency or lawsuit or something that we got to get an answer to faster than wait until the next meeting, or to when we can actually, give people more time than normal. So I think that's my biggest concerns, is that just want to remind people, our duties don't fulfill, whether I'm here or whether I'm in Europe. I mean, whenever we go out of town, and I think more so for supervisor, because she does purchasing, but all of us, and I don't think that we're any different in this way than most people who hold kind of a salary position. Your work piles up and you got to do it. So unless you want to come back and, spend literally, 80-hour work weeks for a couple of weeks, it's a frustration for my family. My kids used to yell about it. My husband always yells about it. I've learned how to work in the system. Let them go to bed and then I work. But we still have to, get the board agendas out. We got to get the packets out. Even though there's staff who's working on that, as an elected official, and I think Supervisor Stumble, there's someone else that probably could approve the purchase orders, but she feels that we feel that that's what we got elected to do, and so we're going to carry those out. Like when I went to Europe, because I couldn't take my cell phone, or it didn't work for the township, I don't know, whatever, Travis said it wouldn't work. I had all my stuff forwarded to my husband's account, so I could actually do my work when I was out of town on his iPad and stuff, so I could catch up. The only time I can remember not doing that was when I went to Cancun. That's because I blew up my phone and messed up all y'all's system back here in the township and stuff. But that was probably the only time. So the job is very comprehensive. Do people just generally try to work the schedule? Yeah, I think we do, and then some. Are we here every day at 8:30? No, I can personally say that I'm not here every day at 8:30. But since Stan brought this up several weeks ago, I just kind of keep in track because I never knew, and it makes me think that I have a sick life. When I actually write down the amount of hours, it's been 57 to 65 hours a week. A lot of that's here, the majority of that's here. A lot of it's at home in the evenings and on the weekends. Radzik yelled the other day, don't want to go to bed? You're sending emails out at 2 a.m. in the morning and stuff, but I think that's just a part of. And I love my job, don't get me wrong. And I do know what Stan said in one of his, I don't know if it was in the policy or it was his email. I think that people do know that when they run for the job, that it's not, as a trustee, it wasn't just coming to the meetings. It was, heading up a lot of other stuff that we did. And so I think that that I'm not in any way trying to say, feel sorry for us or anything, but it's just we're not employees. Our job is really broad, and we're required to fulfill the duties of that job regardless of where we're at. So, and that was just, I think I kind of covered it all. You can look at it specifically, and I guess if you're going to send it to the policy people, that we did that before, and Karen Wallen and Giovanna worked diligently to come up with the trustees, and a lot of stuff, because it was not legal, they didn't include it in the policies for the trustees. And so I think we ended up with a policy there that was legal and met the law. And so that's all I would say is, I don't want to do a policy that's in conflict with the state law. That's all. Thank you.
I would like to, if you want to put it in the policy, I think that's a good idea to reference in there, because when new trustees come or new board members come, at least they have an expectation, to be.
I find it interesting that 3 or 4 years later, after the trustees unanimously signed the document so that we could self-govern ourselves, that we're having such difficulty with this. So I would withdraw this and ask that it not go, because it doesn't seem like there's consensus to do it, and we had a chance to be a difference maker, and we've let it pass.
Trustee Monica?
Actually, I would not want it to go, if possible. And the reason why is because I think, I understand that there was a previous board, and I don't know, maybe it went to HR and got looked over. But I think this is a new board. And so with that, I would like it to go and get looked over. I mean, whatever is is not legal is not legal. Obviously, it can't be in there. But what's legal, what's not legal, I guess. And I understand, I know the lines can get very confusing because we're talking about elected officials versus exempt employees versus hourly employees, and that's where the line can get very convoluted. I would one, say that with that, as a exempt employee, you can work 0 to 150 hours a week, and that doesn't mean that you're going to get paid any different, but you are expected to work. And so if you're not working as an exempt employee, well, obviously, you probably can get terminated. As an elected official, that line is different, because the reason why is because the voters basically are the people that are the persons who will keep you or not keep you if that's the case. But in the same aspect, I think that, and, expectation of, working. And I don't know if, I don't really feel as if we could say, well, 8:30 to 4:30, but an expectation that, you should work, should work, 40 hours a week. You may work more one week, less the other. I don't really believe that's wrong, but that's me. I don't believe it's wrong. I don't know about the hours and stipulating that, but I do believe that an expectation that you should work should be a standard. I just do. And the other part that, concerns me is, and I did mention this, is that since I have been on the board anyway, it seemed like there's, not employees, but raises are tied to what employees do, as in unionized employees. So with that, I guess my question would be, and maybe those discussions need to be looked at in whatever proposed policy, because if that, I guess, make a long story short about it, if we're tying raises to the standards of hourly employees, then something has to be there to say, okay, what is the standard for the raise?
Well,
Does that make sense?
it does, and I
Okay.
appreciate everybody's comments, and I appreciate the clerk's historical reference. My understanding of policies is if you have a policy in place and you don't adhere to that policy, there's a penalty. If there's no penalty because apparently the state says we can't do that, then what's the sense in having a policy? I find it interesting that the comments are made that we're not employees, we're not held to those same standards, yet we use them every November when it's time for the budget to be done, and we say it's a me too, we want to follow the employees. So we want to follow them when it's to a benefit. When it's to hold us accountable, we don't want to use those same standards. And so, again, if there's no expectation of what the work hours are, or the number of hours, the number of days, the amount of time off you can take, how do you then tell somebody that they're not eligible for a raise at the end of the year if we've put no parameters around that? So I think it's just a exercise in futility if there's no standard to hold ourselves to. I think we all saw it in the papers during the fall. An elected state representative out of Detroit, lost in August, chose not to come to work at all until the November elections, yet received a salary during that entire time, benefits, per diems, mileage, everything that went with it. This is a chance, or was a chance, for our township to stand up and say, we're better than that. We do believe that we should hold ourselves to a higher standard and police ourselves. And if I don't come to work 2,080 hours a year during normal business hours, and that I don't take more time off than an employee who I supervise is eligible for, because I have a like amount of service time, if I don't do those things, I'm not entitled to a raise. That's all this document was trying to say. But apparently, again, I'll withdraw it. I don't think it's worth the time of our HR people or anybody else to pursue if we're not going to have some standard to hold ourselves to. Again, it was easy to hold 4 trustees to it, but.
I think that, I know, every year we have to adopt, salaries for every position and the trustees. The trustees are per diem, and what brought it all up for the trustees at that time is because we did have a trustee that did not come to the meeting. And members of the community and who attended the meeting didn't think that was right to do, that you should, so we came up with a per diem, which means if you miss, it's not really a per diem because we allow rolling, is it 5 meetings?
3 absences.
So, and it rolls, so it's really not a true per diem, but we had to figure out a way to go from straight salary for part-time to a per diem. So I don't know how you can do that for a full-time elected official. I'm not sure how you can do that. And it'd be interesting to ask that question. I've never asked that question.
You simply put
But
it,
this said a lot more than that. What you proposed said a lot more than what
Sure.
you just said.
and people have had 2 weeks to ask about it, and I've received one call, one call in 2 weeks.
Well, we're supposed to discuss it here, I thought. I thought that was a,
Let's take out whatever somebody doesn't like. At the end of the day, I simply, and I shouldn't say I, there are a number of employees that work for this township currently, past, and residents who know there's an issue going on. There's people at this board who know there's issues going on, and we continue to be an ostrich and put our head in the sand about it. I simply want to put something into place that says, here's the expectation for a full-time elected official earning almost $90,000 a year to come to work, to supervise the people that work underneath you,
No, we don't.
almost. By the end of this term, it'll be almost, if we continue on this path. And if there's no will to do that and say that this is what we'll hold ourselves to, I understand the state doesn't do it. Nobody at the state level or outside this township, I don't think really cares what we do to hold ourselves accountable. It's us and us alone that can resist this. Nobody else. We hold ourselves to a standard better than anyone else. And if there's no will to do that and say, come to work this amount of days, this amount of hours, don't exceed this much time off, or you're not eligible for a pay increase. Not deducting pay from you. We're just not going to give you any more because you didn't come to work the way the township policy is written. And again, if there's no desire to go forth, I'm okay with that, and I'll leave it alone. I won't bring it up again.
Trustee Rowe? Gerald Rowe?
That's okay, Supervisor Tumble.
God, we're matching.
Pardon me? I'm sorry.
I said they were matching.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
I just,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I guess when it comes to December and we put in those resolutions and stuff for pay increases, it does take 4 members of the board to pass it. So I guess if somebody didn't want me to get a raise, 4 people said no, I wouldn't get a raise. So I think we have, if somebody thinks I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, or I wasn't putting enough time in, or wasn't doing my job properly, 4 board members, 6 board members could say no, and I wouldn't get a raise. So I think we have that opportunity right now.
Well, and Larry, I do respect that,
Trustee
but
Eldred?
that's like disciplining a child, but telling them not ahead of time what the rules are. How do we not give you a raise or do anything like that if you don't know what the parameters are beforehand? That's no different than holding somebody accountable for something they weren't aware of and then not giving them the benefit of what they thought they had earned. You have to have standards or it's a fruitless exercise.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Trustee Monica?
I think that, first of all, I can only speak for this trustee. I don't want it to make it seem like I'm singling out anyone, because I'm not. I guess my question is, what are the standards for when we basically decide, I guess, or not, as a board, to do raises for full-time elected officials? What are those? I don't really know. If this policy is supposed to try and get there minus anything that's not illegal or conflicting with state law, then let's have a review so we don't have anything illegal or conflicting with state law. And then I don't think it would be, I mean, a review is a review. And if it comes back, the whole thing is conflicting with state law, then okay. But at least I would feel like I know at that point. Right now, I feel like I don't know.
You don't know what?
I don't know specifically, what are, like, if the standards are that, every time there's a contract review for unionized hourly employees, that along with that, after that, then there's a raise, then okay, that's fine. But I'm assuming that is, because I don't know if there's, in other words, I don't know what are the standards to deny someone a raise. I mean, I don't want to just deny someone a raise just because. That's not fair. You know what I'm saying?
Well, some communities do it different, and there's a compensation committee, and this board did not want to do that. So every resolution, every year comes before the board, and people vote on it. So, I mean, we could do it a different way where there's a committee of the board to meet, or the trustees to meet and make recommendations. I mean, there's different ways we can do it that way.
How, if I may, sorry,
No, go ahead.
how would a compensation committee change that? They're not here every day, nor are trustees. We don't know when employees, let alone full-time officials, come in and don't come into work, how much time they take off. I don't follow your schedules. How would a compensation committee be any different than the 7 members sitting here that could define a policy moving forward? Because they wouldn't be in this building either.
I think,
Monica?
The only comment on that is, I know I brought up the compensation committee previously, and I think if I have it correct, and I'm not saying this is the way to go, but what I am saying is that the compensation committee, whatever decisions that they make has to be reviewed and debated by the board either way. So it's not as if they're taking away the job of the board. They're just basically, I might as well say, evaluating if there is a reason for a PAR, which is an increase in salary, or not. And then the board can decide, you know what, we don't like the fact that you said that it should be increased, and don't. And that's all. I mean, I just wanted to talk about that because I know I had brought it up before, so I just wanted to add that comment to the record. That's all.
Madam Chair.
Yes, trustee Wilson?
Yes, I guess through you to trustee Eldridge, I guess your last statement is kind of the hang-up right there. How would we actually know what the full-time officials are, if they're here or not here? They could be at a meeting somewhere here in the county, advocating for the township, as I know most of them do. And so how would it actually be policed to know the hours?
I'm not sure that we've gotten to that point yet. I agree that there are many times that all 3 of these officials that are currently here are at a lot of meetings during those business hours. Those are easy to find. You know where those meetings are posted, you know who's attending in many of those cases, and that's not what I'm speaking to. Again, I think there's certainly ways you can do it, but it doesn't feel like there is a will to do it. So again, I'll just say what I said earlier, and I'll withdraw the proposal to move forward because there's no will to do it.
Well, that's not true, because I recommended we put it in the policy manual and reference there, so
But without a,
say there's no will. I don't think that's a true statement.
I still don't think there's a will to do it because there's no will to put in parameters. And again, without standards and a policy, I don't know how you hold somebody accountable.
The same way you do other non-union employees or people that are,
If an employee currently breaks a policy or doesn't adhere to a policy, is there a punishment that can be done, whether it's a verbal or anything else?
there's work schedules for non-bargain for employees as determined by written policy and communicated to each employee.
Right.
Altered work schedules shall be subject to the provisions of the employee's collective bargaining unit or by township policy. Every employee is expected to be regular and punctual in attendance to scheduled work hours. And if we could just incorporate full-time and appointed officials in there,
Sure,
I think that would at least set an expectation of,
I agree. If an employee doesn't meet that standard, is there a penalty for them not coming to work on time? Do we not have supervisors that will supervise them and say, if you don't come in on time, maybe the first offense, the third offense, whatever it might be?
so you want the trustee, who do you want to supervise as the full-time officials?
Well, and this is the debate we got into last time. And we keep saying that the people can not elect you if you want. We have 2 residents in here tonight. 2. I withdraw the proposal.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I would actually like to look at that. I mean, I know trustee Eldridge is actually saying he wants to withdraw his proposal. But what you just read to me, it starts with a standard, and I'm willing to look at it. Because I believe that we can't just continue to have, okay, well, you know, no standard. Because otherwise than that, you have, okay, well, what's going on over here? Well, this is going on over here. Well, do you know? No, rumor. So, I mean, it's like we have to have some type of standard, and that's a start for one.
Okay. Clerk Rowe?
I just wanted to say that I think because we have a difference in, my whole thing is legal, you know, what the law says versus a policy. I think it's really important that we don't have policies that are not, you know, that are not legal. And so it's not an issue of the statement that was made about we don't want to hold people accountable. I just don't think that that's true. And I just want to go back in terms of the wages and the salaries. There was a time when things were really bad, and the township board, including the trustees and all the elected officials, were the first people who we didn't follow the contract. And even though the employees had in their contract raises, we took, not only did we not take raises, we took pretty hefty wage cuts. We cut our pension tremendously, you know, so there was a lot. We stopped the health care because full-time trustees at the time got health care. So the board itself, not just the elected officials, but all members of the board voted unanimously to do that. I think that the whole salary thing, I don't know, it's been that way since I've been here. It's just, I think people saw it as just a fair way, maybe easier way than the compensation committee. The other thing is, you know, I shared with everybody the MTA stuff on the payment, so there's a lot of stuff. But I do agree that if people really think that someone's not doing their job, then it behooves you not to vote for a raise. I really, you know, if I didn't think people, there's just no way that I would vote for people to have a raise. But I think, yeah, so it's not, I don't think it's unfair to say that we don't want to police ourselves. There are mechanisms that are in there to police, you know, that are in there. You have to do that. And believe me, the number of emails and phone calls and everything comes in, those are the folks. It's not the 2 people, even though I love Ms. Kaiser being here and I wish more people did that. It's not the people that come here. It's the people who call and walk in our offices every day and they want to answer. And I think that most all the 3 of us that are full-time, we pride ourselves in almost always, unless there's emergency or something else going on, returning those and getting answers from people on that same day in 24 hours. A lot of times when I work here late at night, people are just, you know, they're appreciative. Sometimes we've even talked, if we really wanted to serve the residents, we wouldn't do the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 4:30 because people got to take off work to get here and do business. You know, should we go to a 4-day work week so that we're here until 6:30 or 7 every night, 4 days a week? So there's a lot of ways. To me, that's what we're about. It's serving the residents of the township and what is the most effective and efficient way to do that. And that, I don't know, I've worked with a lot of, you know, even the people who I politically, you know, didn't, you know, even ran against one of them. He did you know, he was, I think they put in more. You can't be here and get reelected if you don't put in more than, because people, they want you to be able to answer the calls and take care of the business, and you can't do that and do all the other things. What would happen is if you did just 40 hours a week, all the things that we do that are so important, and I believe that our residents, it's not just this board, it's not just me, they have history of what they expect out of their elected officials. And they expect us to go after and getting that GM property developed. Is that statutory? No, that was no one's job here. I think Supervisor Stumble took the lead and we all supported and we all worked on that. The Spark thing, the YMCA, all the things there's a million things that we do outside of that statutory requirements that takes your hours way beyond whatever. What is the legal requirement, Larry, 2000 whatever?
80.
Yeah, it's 2080. It's, you can't do it and satisfy what our culturally and, what our residents expect to be done. And plus, we like those things. I like going to the meetings. That's what keeps you in touch with folks, but that means that your days are really long, than normal. And it's fun to do, like the grants that we did, that all of us worked on, and every department, we all worked on that, but there's nothing in the statute said we had to do a grant. So I don't know, unless you sit in those kind of seats, it's hard. Can we put something generally in some policy that says, yes, we will work? I think it should say that you're expected to work the 2,000 some hours a year. I mean, I think that's because I do think people expect that. I expect that, I think everybody expects that. And maybe for the future, I know the people I serve with now, I know how many hours that they work. But, this is a policy that maybe down the road, that you could reflect on and say, and maybe you could use that to generate whether or not you think it's okay to give a raise. How many hours did they actually put in? I don't know. And I'm like, Jimmy asked a great question. Okay, are we, you want us to punch a clock when we're in and out? I mean, we could, I guess. Like, do you want to measure? Is that, because it is a lot of it. It is a lot on, what are you doing on trust that people put into you? And I think each one of us, when we go door to door and when we took that oath of office, like, you take that seriously. I love my job. I wouldn't keep doing it, even though sometimes it, can get, you can feel like, what Brenda always says, you feel like a guinea pig in a wheel. I always say it's like a revolving door. Like you start one thing and, you're out. But anyways, I appreciate the conversation and stuff people have, but I don't want it to be left because I didn't personally feel, and I think Monica's issue is like, well, let's see what's legal and stuff, maybe we could send it to the attorneys and have them review it, before Karen Wall and them take a stab at it, because it really is. It's kind of like the board rules, send them to Angie, which just an update, that's where they're at. Thanks, Stan, so much for your comments, but they're to Angie King's reviewing them now, and she's going to make sure that everything that's in there is legal and by the book, so that's it. I won't say anything else. I ramble enough.
All right.
But I'm on prednisone today. I want y'all to know.
All right. Did you want to say something, Ms. Kaiser? Is it on?
Oh, I
I think it's on top, Ms. Kaiser, on the microphone
put
itself.
them in there, but I didn't turn them on because I put them in here so early. I forgot to come back and I didn't want the batteries to run down.
Thank you. My name is Arloa Kaiser. I live at 1421 Melvin Street, and with all this talking, I was here when the trustee didn't show up, didn't do anything, and it was almost the 2 years, if I remember correct time. And I think that the full-time officials should be accountable. And I don't know what you know when you're elected, but I hope that you should know how many hours are required or should be required of you, will be required of you. It's not a 40-hour week that you have meetings at night and that kind of stuff. And also, there's a lot of work, but you have quite a bit of staff to do a bunch of the work for you. If you don't write your own letters, I'm sure you have staff help write them. You may read them to see if you think they're okay. And I really do believe this is all about accountability. And I think that it should go into the policy book. Stan has done a great job. It should go in there, not only for this board, but the future board. And I am a voter, and I hope my vote counts in this. I do believe that you do need a policy, because I could be on the board and say, okay, well, I spent all night tonight working on something, so I don't have to go to work tomorrow. Well, I don't think that's what should be done. You have a lot of time here, and I'm not saying, from 5 to 6 or 6 to 9 doing that, but saying, oh, I did an all-nighter. You have staff, help, full-time officials, have the trustees to help them with what their needs are. And I am for having a policy, and please stand, continue.
For the Lincoln High School boys varsity team, they're going to be in attendance, correct? Heather, you invited them? Is it?
I invited them.
Okay.
Yeah, they said they were pretty excited, and I wanted to say, like, when I went for the robotics competition, the proclamation that we did when the football team made it all the way to regionals for the first time in their history a few years ago, they actually have it with a big display, and our little proclamation is in there and stuff, so, and they specifically said, can we have an extra proclamation to put in their state championship case that they're going to do at the school, so.
So they'll be here, and we'll do that.
Yeah.
Did they get directions?
Pardon?
Remember, wasn't it the
Oh, the
football
Van
team?
Buren, yeah.
The next is the public hearings. These are going to be a little bit different than in the past. We have them at,
I'm not trying to bring back up the issue that we just talked about, but I'm just kind of like, where is that left? Is it dropped? Is it going?
we started implementing policies like cell phone use for elected officials and appointed officials. And I think we could implement, those kind of expectations in here, in the personnel policy that was given to everyone.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to
And
make
that
sure.
will come back to the board for approval.
Okay, thank you. That's just a clarification. Thank you.
I mean, I know Stan said withdraw, but I really had every intention on continuing with the personnel policy, which we had already started doing that. So it fits right in, actually. So on public hearings, because there's so many of them, the letters that were sent out were approximately 7 o'clock, 7:15, 7:30, 7:45, 8 o'clock, and 8:15. And I think this is probably the most we've ever had on one agenda. So I'm going to have to, watch the clock and open up the public hearing for the first one. Should be fine, 7, and I think 7:15 will be fine. 7:30, 7:45, if I have to go on to public comments because we're ahead of schedule, then I'll have to go back up to the public hearing. Is that it?
That's my bad. Next time, we're just going to put approximately 7 o'clock, because you want people to, we don't want people to think they were on at 7:30, and then we done went by,
Right.
Thank you for doing that.
We have the minutes of the March work session, March 19th work session, and the regular meeting. Questions or comments?
It was one. I got to
Trustee
find
Leonard.
it. Oh, gosh, it was the last one. So give me just a second.
Does anyone have any questions on the public hearings that we're having? They're the street lights and the cameras.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just briefly, I wanted to say thank you to Mike because I sent something in ordinance because I saw in our next door app that someone thought our cameras were vandalized, but Mike clarified that they weren't. They were just readjusted, and I don't know what they thought, but thank you for responding.
Okay, did you find it, Monica?
I
back
think
to it?
so. It was in regards to the discussion that we were doing. I'll just, and it's in the minutes, but either way, the discussion that we had done regarding the sewers, and if there were sewers, basically, that were county water resources connected, sewers in West Willow, yeah, drains, thank you. It said, I think in the minutes, it said, was it Washtenaw County? And I know what I said, was it Washtenaw County? Was it a part of the Washtenaw County Drain Office? So that was just it. It was just a couple words that were missing.
If you could get the page for,
Okay, I'm looking, so sorry about that.
yeah, when you find it.
I will find it.
Attorney's report?
Well, I can give it this evening while we're sitting here, since you're going to have kind of maybe a choppy agenda, if that's what you want me to do. Do you want the full attorney report now?
Sure.
I can do that. Well, in regards to, earlier today, Angie's in the audience, and she attended the very short closing in regards to the River Grove Townhomes Phase 2. The one gentleman who was the last title holder in the chain of title agreed to convey his legal interest in the 17.19 acres. It comprises 75 lots. And so that 17.9 acres is now, from the title company standpoint, assessing standpoint, and our office standpoint, it now is under the total ownership and control of the township. Initially, back in the end of last year, we started preparing the request for proposals to send out for bid this property, because a number of developers had contacted the Office of Community Standards, especially Mike and Charlotte, asking what the status of that property was, as well as assessing. And now that we have total control, we can do this RFP and bring it back to the township board. I know there's been some discussion about perhaps that this property might be part of a border-to-border connection with the road commission or other parties. That kind of leads me to some other discussions that were referenced in my letter to the board in regards to the ongoing lawsuit involving ADA ramps that were constructed by the road commission at previous locations through the township. And while I'm certainly not here this evening to discourage that border-to-border connection, there are some issues that are raised in that case and positions that have been taken by the road commission that warrant a great deal of further discussion, face-to-face meetings, so there is some degree of clarity in regards to what this board's responsibility is going to be when they seek grants and have infrastructure improvements made, and down the road someone decides that the measurements have changed, the paths may have settled, etc., and now the township is faced with certain unknown liabilities based upon something that was really not engineered nor constructed by this board. Things that you can contract for and engineer for, then I think you do have a duty to be more involved in what happens with the maintenance, etc. But I'm just raising that question because that may or may not impact how we do the RFP in regards to that border-to-border. I don't have all the details. I'm not sure where they wish to have that constructed. We do have a plat in existence over there that shows the 75 individual lot lines. I don't know if any of that would be impacted. So just to throw those questions out, right now there may be more questions than answers. But the one thing we can take to the banks, more or less, is that we do own the property, and it's a valuable piece of property. It's also one that we believe, if the 75 condos were built similar to Phase 1, it would be a great housing option for township residents. It would also increase and help increase perhaps attendance at the Van Buren School District. But anyways, those are issues that have yet to be worked out. In regards to the Rutherford Pool, I believe Angie will have on the next board agenda. Her and Angie Vergis did work out a contract with the Friends of Rutherford Pool, and we also made sure that the township is named as an additional insured on their insurance policy, and she'll probably be discussing that in her letters in more detail at the April 16th board meeting. in regards to the township. I think that this township probably is maybe the only township I'm aware of in the whole state of Michigan that continues to be very, very aggressive and progressive when it comes to how we handle property owners or apartment complexes that are being utilized to sell illegal narcotics. The CAT team, LawNet, work hand in glove with each other and also keep Mike Radzik informed as to what's going on. And this past week, we had some serious raids where the drug that was seized is one that causes all of us a great deal of concern because it involves the seizure of fentanyl. And as we have come to learn, we didn't know this a number of years ago, and we've kind of learned as we've watched it happen at the state level, local level, and national level. Fentanyl accounts for thousands of deaths each year because it's being mixed in with the heroin, and it's led to a lot of drug overdoses. And in fact, I believe, Mike can tell me if I'm wrong, I believe the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, all their officers currently carry with them the Narcan, which is used to act as an antidote if someone is overdosed on fentanyl. And they've also used that antidote when first responders themselves have been exposed to fentanyl. So we've had two serious incidents that occurred over the weekend. One was in an apartment complex, and one was in a house dealing with fentanyl. And I think that while sometimes as a township you might feel somewhat powerless to effectuate national policy of this magnitude, the fact that we continue to padlock those properties and force landlords and property owners to be accountable for who they lease their properties to, or what's going on inside their own home, I think that it's already shown that in many cases that lesson has been well learned. I would also mention that we have what I think is probably our serious challenge from an environmental cleanup standpoint that continues to occur at the site, 923 Ecorse Road, Forbes Cleaners, and Davis Street. The funding that was initially allocated for this cleanup has been redirected for the time being. And the township officials met at our development team meeting, had a conference call with the MDEQ. Supervisor Stumbo wrote a very poignant email to our state officials wanting answers to the questions. I think that Mary Miller has done an excellent job of trying to spearhead that cleanup. But these dollars right now, if they have been reallocated, we have to make sure that they are brought back to the township during the October fiscal budget, because the cleanup on these properties is of a very paramount importance to all of us from a health, safety, and welfare standpoint. I do anticipate having at the next board meeting the one-year contract extension for the 2019 township firefighters. I did share with you the PowerPoint, and hopefully this will allow us an opportunity to go into the rest of this year with negotiations in expectation of having a multi-year contract without being always trying to catch up with all the different other union contracts that have all been expiring at the same time, which has sometimes resulted in someone having to wait their turn. In this way, we think we can get ahead of the game by doing the one-year contract extension and make it a fair contract for the 2019 calendar year. And then finally, I would say that in regards to the what they refer to as the recreational marijuana, although it's known otherwise as the taxation statute, that I have talked to numerous attorneys around the state of Michigan, and I've spent most of my time even talking to attorneys that specialize in marijuana, specialize in representing people who grow marijuana and sell marijuana. And until Lara has adopted their rules, which Supervisor Stumble will share with you this evening, is on a very, very fast track for approval at the state level, that the ones I've talked to understand entirely why any community would opt out of this until such time as everybody knows what the ground rules are. And that's, we have before you tonight that ordinance that has been also revised in accordance with the template recommended by the MTA. And we've also set forth in a very detailed resolution as to what the purpose of that ordinance is to entail, as well as what it does not affect in regards to persons who might grow marijuana for medical purposes. And so I think that when you look around and see the variety of letters that are going on within the township, there's an awful lot on your plates, and we continue to sort of prioritize and reprioritize and try to use time management to figure out which one comes first, and sometimes there is a collision between which one can go first because they all have a significant importance. But as you can sometimes see from the letters that come over to you, I try to, not purposely, but I sometimes try to just give you a variety as to what's going on. So rather than getting 10 letters in regards to public nuisance, you're getting 10 letters, but they may also involve everything that I just touched on in this summary this evening. But there are a lot of things going on, and much more than what I can cover in this report. And I really appreciate all the cooperation of all the township board members, staff members, first responders especially, for what they do day in and day out to make this a better and safer safer community. Police and fire, we think, are outstanding. And thanks to all of you for doing a great job in assisting myself and Angela and Denny, because all of us are trying to follow your direction, follow your policies, try to implement those that make Ypsilanti Township one of the most sought-after destination places to locate now. And that's why I believe those 75 condo units will sell very fast, because people do want to live in an area where they have parks, have recreation, have a fairly good way of getting to and from the expressways. River Grove is unique because it's right next door to the North Hydro Park over there. In fact, Michael Siernan is here tonight. There's another issue Michael's been tracking in regards to the power plant being shut down, not because of us, but because of DTE doing some work, and again, trying to make sure that we don't suffer any penalty because of that, because we're able to produce electricity. They just won't let us do so while they're doing their work, which we understand, but as long as it doesn't affect our $80,000 escrow payment at the end of the year, and Michael has taken steps to confirm that it won't. Anyways, that's a snapshot. Maybe not a snapshot, maybe it's a full-length picture as to what's going on, but there are a lot of things that we're trying to keep up with.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Just a quick comment on the attorney's report as it relates to 923 E-Course. Thank you for writing the letter, what I read. And I would say, I'm just speaking on behalf of myself, it's pretty sad that the money was reallocated to other projects. Hopefully they would, in the new budget that's coming, put it there, put it back where it needs to be to remediate this, to remediate any ongoing issues as it relates to this area. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks. So we have old business, which is the second reading on the fireworks ordinance. Any questions on that? The second item, so this is the tabled item from February 5th for the first reading on the ordinance prohibiting recreational marijuana establishments. Attorney King had outlined a process that was sent to all the board members. If it's the will of the board that, of course, we would have to remove this from table and that we have to vote on it. And then there's a motion to substitute, which is in the packet, the new resolution, which wasn't previously in there, so the resolution is new. And the resolution addresses adopting the ordinance. And then if people vote in favor of substitution, then we actually have a motion to vote on the proposed ordinance. Is that correct? And resolution.
Good job.
This meeting is complicated. Are there questions on that? And,
Madam Chair.
yes.
I would just like to say thank you so much, Angie and Doug, for all of your work on this. I know I was probably a pain in your backside, but thank you. I think it, got the attention it deserved, and I really appreciate both of you working so hard on it, and my fellow board members for putting up with me, especially you, Larry.
Well, I think it'll be properly before the board, and people have notice of it, so it's fairly before the board. And Mr. Winters was talking about a recent article that came out April Fool's Day, and it was in the Free Press, wasn't it, Doug, that you gave me a copy of it, that it's upstairs in my office, but...
I'm live.
And so it stated basically that it's on the fast track, which is what our fear was in our discussion before. So I think this is a good approach for the community as we gather more information on what the regulations are. And Superior Township, I met with them today about the Peninsular Dam. They're looking at removing the dam, which will affect 6 or 8 of our residents along the river there. So and affect Superior Township and City of Ypsilanti. So we were meeting on that, and they discussed that they're going through the same thing right now as well. But it looks like the headline was, it's on a fast track. So they have until December to adopt the regulations, but they can do it sooner. If we adopt the first reading of the substituted resolution and proposed ordinance, then there will be no need for new business number 1.
Correct.
Are we all in alignment on that?
New business number 1 is the resolution ordinance, so we're just,
So on our agenda under new business 1, it's literally it would be the exact same ordinance and resolution that we used as a substitution. Yeah. Okay. Number 2 is to appoint Ryan Hunter to the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority Board with a term ending April 30th, 2024. Number 3 is a fee schedule and valuation data for the building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, sign, and bike path permits. Mike Radzik put this on the agenda. He had an updated agenda, has a 2019 and 2018 proposed differences between the two. And they're based on what's going on around us, surrounding communities. The next one is the professional services fees, and again, it had the 2018 and 2019 fees. We adopt these periodically every 2 years, sometimes every 3 years, it just depends. Any questions on that, on the fees? The next item is the speed humps on Edison Avenue. They've been trying for years to get enough signatures in order to have the installation. They finally achieved it, and the cost of it is $61,950. I do know that Edison is also on the list of proposed improvements on the road commission, so it makes sense to do at the same time these 2 improvements. Edison's a very long street. Budget amendment number 6. Any questions on that? It was revised to include the purchase of the cameras and the costs for DTE that are in the public hearing, and that is a pass-through cost. there's a PTO payout. There's the Toro Groundsmaster and Ford F-50 that was previously discussed. There's increase the Bobcat tree spade in order to remove trees and transplant them. Environmental services for purchase of 20% of the Ford F-50. This will take about 9 months to a year to actually build the Arbor truck, which is crazy to me, but are there any questions on the budget amendment? I know, any questions on the bids for the Toro or?
Madam Chair, just thank you for putting the pictures in there. It's so nice to see what we're buying.
It helps me too.
It helps me, visual.
Yeah, me too. Thanks. You're welcome. We have Travis McDougall, who's the IT manager, and it's to accept the proposal from Comcast for the installation of Ethernet network service between 9 township locations at a cost of $40,930 with a monthly cost of $3,200. Any questions on that? And request to accept the proposal from ACD for internet services at the Civic Center. Low proposal from Next International for server hardware. Travis is here to answer any questions that you may have, because this is a whole nother language to me, IT is. I understand equipment better than I do IT. And then there is a proposal from Granite Telecommunications for the telephone service posts in the amount of $281 per month for 12 months. He also has a cash and carry event to dispose of retired and or obsolete equipment and to dispose of any unsold items through responsible recycling.
Madam Chair, I just had a question about that. Do you have a date that you want to do this, Travis, or?
Not yet.
Madam Chair, just one more question about that, because I think this is the first one that we've done since we've been on the board, but is this something that public notice has to go out and are 2 things before we do? Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
And then there's a request of Mike Sarin to seek quotes for a new truck for hydro station use. They do have a new full-time employee on board, so they need another truck. Any questions? What's that?
Just wanted to say that we found out this week that, or actually last week, I think it was Thursday, that there will be, well, I guess it's a good thing, but we were so looking forward to my first year off without election, but that's not going to happen. We're having an election on Tuesday, August 6th. Right now, we know for sure it's WISD. We do not have language, so I don't know if it's renewal or if it's a new ballot proposal. WCC, Washington Community College, was planning on doing a ballot proposal. Again, I don't know if it was new or a renewal in November, and there's efforts underway to try to get WCC to move their election to August so that we only, have to pay for the one election. So anyways, so anyone that wants to work, we'd love you. This is a great opportunity. We're trying to turn this election news into a positive. It's a great opportunity because it will probably be unfortunately, a small election, so it's a great chance to learn and prepare. If you haven't worked an election or you know somebody that hasn't and they want to work, we're have them come and sign up, and we would be glad to have them and get them in training to get ready for our big year next year, which will have at least 3 elections and possibly 4. Thanks.
Clerk Rowe, when does No Reason AV come into?
It's effect for the May election.
So it might be bigger than we think.
Yeah, it's actually for the May, by law, anybody who has a May election, which we don't, but anybody that does, there's all kinds of training going on. There's a huge amount of training that we have to do, and all the staff and inspect, anybody that's associated with AVs, different work hours in the office, just a lot of stuff, so.
I'm guessing it'll be a higher turnout, just percentage-wise, because of no reason
I mean, we
AV.
talk about it, but, I mean, we know
Let's see.
about it, but you just wonder how much the public, I mean, we're going to do everything. We've actually even included some stuff on the website as to when it passed, and, but, you know, we're not allowed to do a mailing to say, hey, do you want AV? Give us a call. But, so if anybody can spread the word, I'm probably going to put together some kind of flyer that we can get to Neighborhood Watch and stuff too, but yeah. Encourage everyone to vote absentee now that they can.
Right. Ms. Kaiser?
My name is Arloa Kaiser, I live at 1421 Melvin Street, and I want to thank Monica Ross Williams for coming to Sugar Brook's Neighborhood Watch meeting to explain the business on the marijuana ordinance that is going to be voted on tonight. Also, Crystal, and I'm not sure what her exact, is it community engagement? Yes.
Whatever. yeah.
And to get the word out to our neighborhoods and to people, and I do appreciate it. And so do the other people that come to the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to put this under other business. The other day, Sunday, I was driving down East Michigan Avenue and saw a gentleman with a grocery store cart and 3 trash bags that were full with items. And so I thought he worked for CVS, so I pulled over and I wanted to ask him, did he work for CVS or was he just doing this on his own? And he was actually doing this on his own. So the gentleman's name is Dave McLeod. He lives off of East Michigan, East Grand Boulevard. And he was a resident in our community that decided to take a Sunday where it was very, very much raining, Saturday, sorry, where it was raining a lot, and pick up trash. And so I just wanted to make sure I put that on the record. And I know I talked to Supervisor Stumbo on Saturday, I think, and Sunday, about trash and, ways that it can be addressed in our community. And I know that, you're looking into that, but I just wanted to make sure that that resident was thanked. I know I thanked him, and I think it needed to be on the record because he didn't have to do that. That's, not his job, but he cared about the community enough that he decided to do that on a Saturday where it was raining, so.
Yeah, and just, I let Monica know that we have seasonal employees that started a little bit earlier, and that's what they're working on, is picking up trash. We also utilize a work program anytime and every time that the Washtenaw County work program is available to assist with trash. And then we're also looking at we have a professional service contract with Looking Good Lawns, and they have like a vacuum of some sort that vacuums up garbage before they mow. So they're going to try to use that as well. But of course, the best thing to do is not throw trash out your window. That would be the best. I also think that like grocery stores and smaller stores that people walk out and then things blow out of out of their basket or out of their hands, that it collects too. So I hate garbage in the roads. I think a clean community is a happy community. And so if there was, and Monica talked about, if there was a way to get more people to just, adopt or just pick it up, just help out and pick it up, because I think we have 300 miles of roads in Ypsilanti Township. So there's a lot to do. And if we can just keep it clean, it would be great. And I greatly appreciate that gentleman doing it. There's one on Ford Boulevard too that he's actually in a wheelchair, and he keeps Ford Boulevard. So it's cool that people are doing that, but we also are doing it as a township. MDOT roads, they do not pick up trash. The state of Michigan, Washtenaw County Road Commission, and the road right-of-way, they do not do it either. So we try to use every angle that we can to help keep the community clean. All right. That's it. Any other questions or comments? No?
Work session ends at 6:26.